Good evening, everybody. Coming at you live on another edition of Sunday Night Live. I'm your host, Jason, and with me, as always, I'm going to start my top left, your right. The guy who knows it all, Joe. From the Giants corner, Joe knows.
That's right. Good evening, gentlemen. How are you all? Um, Happy to be here Sunday night, as always, with you fine gentlemen.
And then a man who needs no introduction, but I'll introduce him anyway. A guy who I had the privilege, nay the pleasure, of drafting in our home league this fine afternoon. I'm gonna bring in George. How you doing this evening, George?
Man, I feel like $1,000,000. I feel like I'm well rested. I'm not tired. You won't see me yawn one time through this entire show. And I do want to point out the fact that I appreciate you went with the old school throwback entrance with Justin, Nate, and Coach for the start of the show. I appreciated that. It didn't. I'm not going to let that get overlooked.
Dude, you're welcome. Look, it's Toilets Titles. Without those three, we wouldn't be here. So, old school intro. Just programming note. We've got this Sunday Night Live, and we've got one more next week. The week before the season starts, and then we won't be counter programming on Sunday night against football. But this show will be replaced by Title Time Sunday morning, where we'll be talking start sit. It'll be me, George, and Rich, who's normally with us but is driving home. Only what I can imagine is the greatest Frito convention of all times. So
all the chips you can eat.
All the chips you can eat. Look, right before this, we had a Toilets Title meeting, which George rested through, which is great for him. But with that, we talked about all the great things coming up in season. I think the final tally was 17 shows per week that we're going to be releasing. We're going to be releasing, yeah. You don't have to catch it all, but we'll have anything you want, anything you need, from team-specific shows during the day, fantasy content at night, title show on Tuesdays, our start sit on Sunday mornings. We've got a Cowboy show. Joe knows doing right from there from the Giants corner is going to be doing the Giants corner. Guys, we've got something for everybody throughout the whole season. This has been an incredible off season for Toilets Titles, and we're only going to get better in season. We've got something for everybody, including if you join our Patreon at patreon.com/Toilets Titles. If you join our Patreon, we're going to be doing weekly giveaways for you guys. We're going to be doing a weekly waiver wire show on our Start Sit show Sunday morning. And I said that wrong. Start Sit show Sunday morning. We're going to be giving Patreons the first questions. As their questions come up, we're going to answer them before any other questions because you're Patreons, because you care enough to pay for us that we care enough to answer your questions first. So we're doing a lot of stuff for Patreon members, and so that'll be great. Also, I do want to mention joinrival.com/title tribe. They're going to be doing season long fantasy football sports. But they're doing the cool stuff too, like head to head against people on specific players. You can talk about, what you can bet on a player's projected totals, which is kind of fun. That's for the degenerates like Rich, who like those weird, spot bets. Those things are kind of cool. And then Justin's favorite, the bingo card. Jump in and check any one of those things out. Again, joinrival.com/title tribe. They'll match your deposit up to $200. And if you use the Title Tribe code or that link below, you get an extra $25 as well. So join rival.com/title tribe. I'm going to get this out of the way. My son has been joining us for the show, but my wife jumped on him for that. So he's saying, "Hi, Dad. I'm going to leave now. So bye." Eli, thank you very much. Now go get your shower because you stink, boy.
School. All right. He's got school in the morning.
He's got school in the morning. Absolutely. We did Epcot yesterday, and we got home late. He didn't shower, so now he's a bit Mickey Mouse funky.
That's a good funky to be.
So he's all right, guys. So we are going to jump into news and notes from this past week. Week 3 of the preseason. It's I know we've got probably game's on now, but it's just about over. And, the Raiders' long national nightmare is over as well. Josh Jacobs signed a 1-year, $12 million deal, and he is going to report to the team. So for fantasy purposes, do you guys think there's any concern about his lack of playing time, his lack of practice, not necessarily the playbook, but just like lack of physically being on a football field with the team? And I'm going to start with Joe. What do you think?
It's not gonna stop me from drafting wherever I would normally draft him. To be honest with you, like it's running back. It's probably the most friendly in terms of diving right in. I would say, besides maybe kicker. So listen. If he's there whenever I want to draft, like say second round, or maybe even first. Some people maybe first. I'm thinking second round for Jacobs. That's just me. I'm taking him, no problem.
George, any injury concerns here with like soft tissue for not participating in the team activities?
No, I imagine that even though he's not been partaking in team issues, he's still been practicing. He's still been exercising. He's still been training. He's been going through doing drills on his own. So not really necessarily concerned. He knows the playbook. It's the running back position, so it's not very hard to run, to do that position, especially somebody who, like Josh Jacobs, did it all last year and, was the rushing champ last year. Yeah, he's a veteran. I've got no concerns whatsoever. I think drafting him back into the second round is appropriate.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I agree, and again, bonus, it's another contract year for him. So, it's another year one in which he's trying to somebody's messing with their feed. George, tinkering. It's fine, George. You can leave it as is.
Sorry, my face was halfway behind the signage up there. I needed
that's on purpose.
I wanted to show this glorious beard I got here. It needs to be. It needs to be on TV. It needs to be seen.
So, anyway, so as I was saying, that's for Josh Jacobs, that's another year of him trying to earn some money. So going to run as hard as he can. And it's another year of the Raiders not caring if they hurt him. So, Josh Jacobs is going to get used and abused.
It's the same thing with Saquon, playing for another contract.
Absolutely. Yep. Although I can see the Giants being nicer to Saquon than the Raiders were to Josh Jacobs were last year.
I hope so, man, and I hope they eventually get some sort of long-term deal as a Giants fan, because I love the dude, and I think he could be just as effective with fewer touches. To be honest with you, with more weapons around, spreading, just expanding the field with more vertical weapons, and we'll see. But I'd love to see him stick around long-term, and we'll see what happens with that. I just hope this doesn't become a Buffalo situation where I don't think Buffalo doesn't really have the running game in the repertoire too much, and I like balance myself. So,
all right. So the next thing we got on here is Trey Lance has been traded to Dallas for a 2024 4th-round pick. I'm just gonna ask: is he the biggest bust in NFL draft history?
Man, I don't know. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. No, go ahead, Joe. All right, fine.
No, I'll stick with. I'll still go with Jamarcus Russell, because Jamarcus Russell, or Ryan Leaf. Take your pick. Like, there are other guys bigger than Trey Lance, because Trey Lance, he never should have come out of the draft that year, the year that he came out, after having one season, I think it was, in college football. That was ridiculous. These other guys came out with there was a lot against him coming out, as opposed to say like a Ryan Leaf or a Jamarcus Russell, or even many others. But in terms of what the 49ers gave up to get him, that was that was crazy. But so talent wise, I don't think he was the biggest bust. But if you mean that move, trading up 3 first-round picks to get him, yeah, I guess so. I guess you're right.
It's all encompassing, right? Like, it's not just that he wasn't good. It's that he was as bad as he was, and they gave up what they gave up. So, George, go ahead.
Excuse me. I don't think he's So for him, it's too soon to say he's a bust. I mean, the kid's only 23 years old.
Talent-wise, yeah.
So it's way too soon to be calling him a bust. It's not his fault. Go ahead,
he's
Jason.
a draft bust. He's a draft bust, though, right? Like it doesn't from now. If he goes on to win a Super Bowl as Dallas's starting quarterback, he's a draft bust for the 49ers. Oh, no, absolutely, he's a draft bust.
He's absolutely not, because the 49ers really didn't give him an opportunity. He's had only 300 professional dropbacks. That's not his fault that the 49ers trade him. He's not a draft bust. Now, he's not going to get a much of an opportunity in Dallas right away to start. They are committed to Dak Prescott for the next 2 years. So, but the guy is only 23 years old. I do agree with Joe that he probably never should have been drafted. Like, I do believe that he should not have come out that year. He should not have been drafted that year. If you look at the amount of games he's played, like, it's very, very little between both college and the NFL. He had 1 year in college, then he had the COVID year. He redshirted his freshman year in the pros, and then he played the first couple of games as an NFL pro and got injured, and then they traded him. So no, it's way too soon to call him a bust. It's way too soon to call him a draft bust. You can't call somebody a draft bust who hasn't had an opportunity to do anything.
Yes, you can. Because when you're the number three, when you're the number 3 overall, and you can't get on the field because you're not good enough to get on the field over somebody like Jimmy Garoppolo, but you're the number 3 overall. They traded 3 first-round picks to get you. If you're not good enough to get on the field, you're a bust.
So are we just going to pretend that Jimmy Garoppolo is not a decent quarterback? Like, he did take that team to the Super Bowl. He did take that team to the NFC Championship. Like, that, he is a good quarterback.
We are 100% going to say that Jimmy Garoppolo is not a good enough quarterback to trade 3 first-rounders, to draft a quarterback 3rd overall, and then keep the job. Yes, we are saying that. Yes. Because Jimmy Garoppolo is not that guy. He's not.
Jimmy Garoppolo is one of the most decorated quarterbacks
they draft
playing right now.
Believe it or not,
if you look at his record, if you look at what he's accomplished as a starting quarterback in this league, come on, man. He took them to a Super Bowl. He took them to an NFC Championship game in the span of 3 years. Like, let's not crap on Jimmy Garoppolo like he's not a half-decent quarterback. He is.
For viewers at home, I just want you to know this is George and Jason every single day, every single night, not just this show. I will say, though, listen, I think you're both right in that I do think he's a draft bust for the 49ers. That doesn't mean that I think that, his career is a bust yet, but it was a draft bust for the 49ers. I wouldn't necessarily give up on Trey Lance yet. Like, he's going to the Cowboys, like he could wind up, with just, some more time. Like, this dude needs more time. You couldn't have a harder start, more difficult start to your tenure in the NFL than he had, where he wasn't ready. And, he went out there, he got injured, lost a whole year. Everything that could go wrong for Trey Lance went wrong. I have a feeling he's, not going to wind up having a Geno Smith type of renaissance like in 5 years or anything like that. I don't think so, but I think he could it's possible that he could wind up having an NFL career. I don't think it's crazy to think that. The guy does have he's got incredible traits. He just needs time. He needed to get out of San Francisco too. San Francisco's fine without the guy. But I think Jason's right that it was a draft bust for the 49ers. I'm not saying he's necessarily busted yet.
I think it was a bad situation for him in San Francisco because you had the coach who really didn't want him, right? Like, the coach really wanted Mac Jones. The coach really wanted Mac Jones.
So
that's why all the reports.
That's
why, yeah. And John Lynch wanted Trey Lance because he viewed Trey Lance as a more dynamic player than what they had in Jimmy Garoppolo. They had Jimmy Garoppolo there. Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't get them to win the Super Bowl. And John Lynch viewed Mac Jones as the exact same thing as what he's already got there in Jimmy Garoppolo. So he wanted somebody who was a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more explosive, bring something a little bit different to the table, which is exactly what Trey Lance did. But I still believe that it's hard to succeed in the NFL, especially at the quarterback position, when your head coach wasn't 100% sold on drafting you to begin with. And I view that as that's the same thing that happened to Tua when the Dolphins had drafted him. Brian Flores wasn't 100% sold on him. Brian Flores actually wanted Justin Herbert, but the owner wanted Tua. So that's why we had all these rumors about, going for Tom Brady and going for Deshaun Watson. It was because the coach was not sold on Tua Tagovailoa. So it's hard for these quarterbacks to come in, especially somebody as inexperienced as Trey Lance was and is, to come in and succeed when you're coming into a house that's already divided and one guy who's specifically the head coach isn't 100% sold on you and wanting you there to begin with.
Yeah. Do you guys see a path in Dallas?
I think so. I joined a space last night with it was Des Bryant was talking about it, and they had Ray Garvin, Ray GQ, and everybody knows me. I highly respect Ray GQ and his opinion and what he does. He's a very knowledgeable guy. I agree with the sentiment that he was putting out there. Is this is a move, not necessarily right now for Trey Lance, but maybe in 2 years when Dak Prescott's contract is up, because they're tied to him for the next 2 years. The dead cap on him is so much, like they can't get out from underneath that dead cap, I don't believe. So it's one of those things where he'll be able to go into Dallas. There's no pressure on him in Dallas. He's not the number 3 pick in Dallas. He's not the guy Dallas traded, 3 first-round picks for. There's no pressure on him. He's the guy they gave up a 4th-round pick for. That's nothing. So he can go in, learn the playbook, and then you look at Dallas's team. They just gave Trayvon Diggs an extension. Micah Parsons is coming up. Tony Pollard is going to want an extension. They got their guys on their offensive line who are coming up for extensions. Like, they have a lot of big contracts that are going to be coming forward. And if they want to be able to afford everybody, it might be one of those things where 2 years from now, we're talking about Trey Lance as the starting quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, because you can re-sign him. And by then the starting quarterback market, if you go to reset it as each quarterback typically does, you're talking 50, 55 million at that point. You're not paying Trey Lance 50 to 55 million. You could probably get away with paying him 25, 30 million and saving yourself some cap, because he isn't proven and he's not, Dak Prescott. You're not going to have to pay a Dak Prescott contract, because Dak would probably want to reset the market again. So in 2 years from now, I see it could be potentially a good thing for Dallas. So for the trade, I like it for the Cowboys.
Well, and what I like specifically, we've mentioned Trey Lance is 23, like Stetson Bennett's 25. You know what I mean? Like with it, so 2 years from now, he'll be as old as Stetson Bennett is today.
And he'll have 4 to 5 years.
Years in the league with it to get experience. So doesn't matter if he doesn't start right away in Dallas. He can be the heir apparent. So not a bad thing for him for sure.
And
the one thing.
Go ahead, George.
No, go ahead. So the one thing I found interesting when reading the blurbs at the bottom of the screen, watching the NFL Network, watching some of the preseason games yesterday, is that Trey Lance wanted out of San Francisco, so he has a shot at being number 2 on another team. And it's like, man, I don't know if I want my quarterback aiming for number 2. It just struck me as weird, but I know why. I totally get this sentiment. He knows he's not leaving now and going to start for an NFL team, but it just struck me as odd as like a 1st-round quarterback who you want to be fiery and competitive aiming to be number 2. It was just an odd.
And what I was going to say is, for the Cowboys, even like right now, let's say like Dak goes out and gets injured, right? And he ends up missing significant time. you look at what they have as far as backups goes. Like they had Cooper Rush. I think if something should happen, and let's face it, Dallas is in a win now mode. So especially being over there in the NFC, like it's a much, I don't want to say it's a lesser division,
It's a lesser
but
division.
it's a lesser division. So having somebody like Trey Lance who can come in and be the backup, learn it, and if something happens, like, do you feel better with Cooper Rush as your quarterback or Trey Lance? So it's an all around. It's a good move for the Cowboys.
Yeah, short term Cooper Rush. Obviously, he knows the playbook, but
Totally.
as
They were like 6-1 with him last year.
As the season progressed, well, and that's based off don't turn over the ball. Our defense is good enough.
That's okay. That's all you need.
Yep.
Hey, look, according to George, being that type of quarterback makes you the most decorated quarterback in the league right now, as Jimmy Garoppolo.
I said one of.
Well, I'm just saying, like,
I mean,
Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. Jimmy Garoppolo ain't special, but we can move on from there.
How many active quarterbacks right now in the league can say they've taken their team to either the AFC or NFC championship game or the Super Bowl? It's only a handful. It's not very many.
Absolutely. Anyway, we can move on from Trey Lance. We're going to talk about Joe's favorite trade of the week. The Cardinals traded Isaiah Simmons to the Giants for a 2024 7th-round pick. I remember watching the draft where Simmons went off the board thinking the Cardinals got a guy. They got a dude in Isaiah Simmons. I was super jealous as a Bucs fan. That, I remember thinking this is going to be the guy. And now it could be coaching. It could be poor acclimation. What I do remember from that draft is saying, hey, they were going to have to figure out how to use him because he's raw talent, good as a linebacker, but maybe not the right size for their scheme. I remember all those things and thinking, like, all right, good coaching can take a player like that and put him on the field and succeed. We've noticed lately that the Cardinals haven't had good coaching. They weren't able to do that. Now he goes to an organization that looks like they finally figured out their coaching issues, going to the Giants. Sounds like I didn't get to watch the game, Joe, but you'll be able to tell me that Simmons looked like he made an impact almost right away. So what do you think, Joe?
Yeah. I mean, it was like, listen, it was just literally first day on the job, the Giants, and I think it was like the first 3rd down play, and unsurprisingly, I say unsurprisingly because this is typical Wink Martindale. Sent him on a blitz. He loves to blitz, and he almost got home with Rodgers. It wound up being a busted play for Rodgers. So that was cool to see. He's got those great intangibles that you just can't teach. Obviously, like size, size and speed. And but I'm with you, Jason. I was the same way. Like that draft night, 2020, I guess it was. Because I remember it was the same draft that the Giants took Andrew Thomas, number 4 overall. And I was like, man, if we didn't need offensive line help so badly, which we still do, we didn't. And that draft was loaded with tackles, really good tackles. I'm like, man, if we didn't need a tackle so badly, I'd love Isaiah Simmons. And I remember the concern was, well, he's a jack of all trades type of guy. Is that going to translate to the NFL? And I was saying, Isaiah Simmons is the one who's going to make it work. He's going to make it work. And I don't know what it was in Arizona. I don't know. It could have been coaching because, it could have been coaching. I just don't know. Let's not forget Arizona, like 2 years ago, started off like 6-0, 8-0, something like that. They were kicking everyone's butt. They wound up going like 10-6. They wound up having a really bad second half of the season. I don't know what happened there, but obviously it's a totally new regime now. That roster is being turned over. I think a lot of it, I have a feeling most of it's on him. And we'll see what happens when he comes to the Giants. I mean, I'm excited as a Giants fan just because for 7th-round pick, I see him as an instant upgrade over someone who would have made the team, who would have been like a 3rd stringer or whatever, who would have been a totally, definition of mediocrity. How he's going to do in the Giants, he's going to help our team. Whether or not he's going to actually, I'm not going to come out here and say, oh, he's definitely going to reach that potential of being the number 8 overall pick. I don't think so. I don't, nothing like that at all. But I think Wink will find a way to make him more effective and definitely help this team. So, like I said, there was nothing negative for the Giants in this trade for a 7th round pick. Kind of like what you use 7th round picks for is trades like this. And it's an instant upgrade. I don't know how much of an upgrade, but he's going to be better than, a player that would have made the team otherwise. So, but I am excited about
And I don't think George needs to add anything to that. I think that was perfect.
I think Joe broke that down excellently.
Joe, because like I say, Joe knows.
He knows.
All right, injury update. Broncos wide receiver Jerry Jeudy is expected to miss several weeks with a hamstring injury. His status for week 1 is uncertain, but there's optimism it's not a long-term injury. Do you guys find Mims interesting as a late-round pickup now that
yeah.
George, Mims?
I mean, yeah, why not, right? Like, they've had so many. Someone. Yeah, exactly. Like, the only receiver they really have there right now is Courtland Sutton, who everybody seems to be down on, which never really made a whole lot of sense to me. But, everybody
you say that, but he in our home league draft this week, he did fall. I had my sheet set up by tiers. I had my tier set up with ADP, and man, he blew down past ADP and kept going. Somebody finally got him, and that's well after the Jerry Jeudy news. So, it's.
I drafted him today.
Go ahead, George.
I would say he went the 10th round in our home league, but our home league is not exactly the league I want to reference when talking about ADP. I mean, we had a kicker go in the 8th round. We had a defense go in the 9th or the 10th. So let's not preach and swear by the holiness that is our home league as far as ADP for players go.
Listen, the average league is our home league, man. There's always a guy that does that kind of stupid stuff. It is.
I absolutely get that, but it's not the league I want to reference when talking about Courtland Sutton, especially now that he's really him and Mims are the last 2 wide receivers there. So it's just one of those things where I'm not only concerned about the injury for Jerry Jeudy right now, but soft tissue injuries, like, they tend to flare up quite a bit during the season as well. Yeah. Like, you're never really 100% healthy and 100% healed from having them. That's the one giant takeaway I got from doing our TGIF show last year with Justin, talking about all these player injuries, is these guys who suffer, significant soft tissue injuries, they tend to flare up and come back during the season as well. So, I mean, I'm interested in Courtland Sutton. I probably would have taken him a little earlier than when he went in our home draft, had my draft fallen that way. But the way I tend to draft is I get just a couple of those middle tier receivers, and that's about it. And then I want to load up on my running backs. So that's the way I draft. That's what I did, and I like Courtland Sutton. Russ is going to have to throw it to somebody.
I had always liked Courtland Sutton before. I was pretty much out on him after last season. I'm just out on Denver, to be honest with you, after last season. I did wind up taking Sutton, though, just because it was round 10 when I took him, and Mike Evans had just gone before. After that, he was like the last of like the wide receiver ones, if you can call him that, kind of like along with Jeudy. He was the last of the wide receiver ones. It would be between like him, Sky Moore. Actually, Sky Moore went before him. Hollywood Brown. I'm not into Hollywood Brown. Elijah Moore could have a nice bounce back here in Cleveland, but I went with Sutton. He was like my 3 or 4 wide receiver, and I see him as kind of like a wide receiver 1 round 10. So I took him. I'm not really expecting too much. Regarding Mims, I would just say to people, I've got my eye on Mims for waiver wire. I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like it. The dude was a gamer out of Oklahoma. I really, really like him a lot. We talk about Josh Downs, rightfully so, out of UNC, who the Colts took, and keep an eye. That guy is like a Jahan Dotson type of vacuum player. He doesn't drop anything, catches everything, even though he's small. Mims is like that too. So I would say, viewers, for waivers, keep an eye on Mims. Keep an eye, even though he's a rookie.
We had a kicker go in our home league, Joe, before Mike Evans. I just want to throw that out there.
That's crazy. I had Mike Evans I had Mike Evans go 2 picks before Cortland Sutton. I'm like, man, I can't believe I realized Baker Mayfield is there, and no one likes Baker Mayfield, I guess. But I'm like, dude, it's Mike Evans. He's like the guy.
He'll have 1,000
yards. Yeah, I'm like,
he'll have 1,000.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to believe that he can't. Even Baker Mayfield's been in the league for quite a few years now. He has been a starting quarterback. There's no reason to think that Mike Evans can't get.
There's a reason to think
yards.
There's a reason to think Mike Evans can't get 1,000 yards. His name is Baker Mayfield.
I mean, no offense, but Baker Mayfield's not worse than Mike Glennon. Baker Mayfield's not worse than Josh McCown. Like, yeah. He's no worse than either one of those guys. Mike Evans said 1,000 yards with both of them.
He's safe.
The quarterbacks, Mike Williams. Sure, Mike Williams over the last 4 years has played with Jameis Winston, Tom Brady. Maybe the last 5 years, but there was 4 to 5 years before that where he didn't have those two guys.
You know what he was 4 to 5 years before that? He wasn't 30, and he didn't have Baker Mayfield throwing him the ball.
I mean, we can make a bet on 1,000. I'm cool with that.
I would rather have had him. I would much rather have had him over Cortland Sutton, especially in round 10. I should have taken him in a round before.
All right,
so I think.
So speaking of wide receivers, Corey Davis has retired from the NFL after 6 seasons. 6 seasons, far too long in Joe's opinion. I believe he's allergic to competent quarterback play. That's what I'm gonna go with, because just when the Titans get Tannehill starts looking good, Corey Davis can go off wherever he wants to play for a good team, a passing team, a good team that can get him the ball. And he settles on freaking the Jets with terrible quarterback play. And just when the Jets get good and they get Aaron Rodgers and they get somebody who can throw the ball, I'm done. He's not going to throw me the ball. I quit.
Yeah. Listen,
I know, Joe, you have feelings for Corey.
Yeah, maybe Nate and I have always been too. The feelings have always just been, it's been fantasy-wise, where I've heard too many people over the past 4 or 5 years talking Corey Davis. Corey Davis is actually pretty good. And, I've always been like, man, I don't see it. I've never seen, not in terms of consistency. Maybe you'll get a game where there's 90 to 110 yards and a touchdown, and I know this guy, I think he was taken in the second round 6 years ago. So, all these expectations, but there was never any consistency with this guy. And so it was more like I got sick and tired of hearing people talk about Corey Davis when it came to fantasy football. So nothing personal, Corey. I know you're probably watching. I just want you to know it's nothing personal against you.
He's got nothing else going. He's not going. He doesn't have anything else going on now. He's retired. He's probably hanging out watching this show for sure. So Corey, I always believed, didn't you, as a really late round. I mean, that's the thing. George likes to talk about my love for Corey Davis. I took him a lot, but it was always round 14. Hey, nobody else is. Who else am I going to take round 14? This is a guy. Round 14, I'll take a flyer.
Find somebody who loves you as much as Jason loves Corey Davis.
In the 14th round or later. It's a condition. It was for sure a conditional love. Conditional on me not needing somebody that actually play on my team. All right. So Michael Rappaport reports the Patriots have traded running back Pierre Strong to the Browns in exchange for offensive tackle Tyrone Wheatley. This is kind of a big deal for Chubb owners, only because up until this point, I wasn't sure who they were going to put in if Chubb needed a break. Pierre Strong has shown in the preseason, at least in limited action, that he does have some chops. I don't think he's going to take away a lot of fantasy value from Nick Chubb. I do think he's a guy that can spell him a little bit better than what they have. So, guys, any thoughts on Pierre Strong going to the Browns? George, go first.
I think this more impacts Chubb with the fact that it's not really who's going to come in to replace him. It's more who was going to play the receiving back for the Browns. Up until this point, we were expecting Nick Chubb to be heavily involved both in the run and the passing game now. And the Browns went out and traded for a pass-catching running back, which is exactly what Pierre Strong is. He's a pass-catching running back. And I think he got freed up when the Patriots signed Zeke. And so, it just made Pierre Strong expendable. I know he was one of Nino's Dynasty Diamonds last year. He talked about Pierre Strong. He's been pumping him this whole offseason. I think it's a good trade for the Browns. It does give them another running back that can go out and spell Nick Chubb and also somebody who can get involved in the passing game for them. So I like it for them.
I don't really have feelings on this either way. I will just say I remember when Tyrone Wheatley was drafted by the Giants in the mid-1990s. So I didn't realize
to the Giants.
I didn't even realize there was a Tyrone Wheatley Jr. I had no idea until I saw this on the document.
Well, I do appreciate more Giants information from the Giants corner. Thank you, Joe.
It's Giants world, baby. We just live in it.
We just live in it.
Some sad news for me specifically. The Bucs will place Ryan Jensen on season-ending injury reserve thanks to complications from knee injury that robbed him of nearly all last season. The real bummer about this is what likely happened is he rushed to come back for a terrible, terrible playoff loss so he could protect Tom Brady in the playoffs, thinking they might make a run. And since then has participated in 3 total non-team drills, so like specific drills in all of the preseason. His career is likely over at this point. So big blow to the Bucs offensive line, but really a bad thing for, a Pro Bowl caliber player on that offensive line for the Buccaneers, and just not cool all the way around. Not a big fan of the way Bucs, just from a Buccaneers point of view, not a big fan of the way the Buccaneers handled it. I wasn't a big fan of him coming back for that one playoff game, specifically because all the Buccaneers knew that, come on, they had a losing season. Not that they couldn't have had a winning season. They pulled their starters at halftime on that last game against the Falcons. Had they left them in there, they likely would have won, and then they would have been 9-7 instead of 7-9. So it's not like they couldn't have been a winning team last season. But again, 7-9, 9-7, not a great season. Pretty bad offense. It was pretty obvious they weren't going to the Super Bowl. So to put Pro Bowl caliber offensive linemen on the line for a game like that is pretty much a bummer. He did want to play, but you got to protect players from themselves in those situations. Yep. And now it's like his career's over. He's made plenty of money. It's not like he's going to ever hurt for anything, but it's just having a career cut short kind of sucks.
Yeah. No, it's a shame, man. I always like to see the teams err on the side of caution when it comes to those types of injuries. I'll bring it back to the Giants with one. Every team has a key player who's coming back from a torn ACL, pretty much. Either very significant or somewhat significant player. For the Giants, we've had like 3 coming back. Some of these players are more significant than others, but Wan'Dale Robinson, he had torn ACL, October of last year, and they're talking about him being ready to be back. I'm like, leave this guy on the pup, please, for a little while. Like, you've got enough slot depth. We've got slots all around in Giants land right now. So I like to see them just take it easy with these injuries and don't rush him back, because it's not worth it. You want to get the player back fully healthy and when they can actually be themselves as well in terms of their play caliber.
And, just as history here, just as worth noting, little quote there from Joe, New York full of slots.
Absolutely.
I've got a couple little things here as well. The Colts release veteran Kenyon Drake. Vikings release N'Keal Harry. Again, nobody cares, but former fantasy names that we all know. No, they didn't pan out.
I always stayed away from. I got to say, Kenyon Drake was my version of Corey Davis for you, where I would take him like round 14, thinking this is going to be the year where someone's going to use him correctly, and he's going to get a whole bunch of touches, and he's going to be like the Isaiah Simmons of the running game. He can hand it off, he can pass it to him, and he had those traits, but never worked out. N'Keal Harry gave up on that dude quite a while ago.
I mean, N'Keal Harry, in a pretty bad fantasy year draft, he was the number one player off the board in rookie drafts. That was the year, I think, Josh Jacobs, right, where he was the.
It was between Josh Jacobs and N'Keal Harry. Who you're going to take number one? N'Keal Harry was a can't miss prospect.
Playing with Tom Brady at the Patriots, so not a big deal as far as the NFL goes, but for fantasy players, been around a little while. I remember N'Keal Harry is a name, so just putting that news out there. And then the last thing I'm going to touch on before we get out of here for the night, we had another game completely stopped due to injury. This time, the Dolphins, precautionary reasons to cart him off the field, out of the hospital. Doesn't look like it's going to be as bad as some as we've seen. So thumbs up there, but it was another game completely stopped. I guess it's a luxury in the preseason to go ahead and send everybody home. It's not something they'll be able to do a lot in the regular season. So, but good on them. It's a preseason game. It doesn't mean anything. Send people home and we'll move on from it. So good to see that everybody's going to be okay out of that situation.
Yeah.
Guys,
yeah,
you guys have anything coming out of the last week of the preseason you want to touch on before we wrap this bad boy up?
The only thing I have to say is can't wait for the season to start, man.
Yeah, we're so close now.
Yeah,
George.
Starting next week. When we do the show next week, we'll have a better idea of the cut candidates because NFL rosters are getting ready. So in past years, it was you had to cut down to 86, and then you had to cut down to 72, and you had these cut down days. This year, it just goes from 93 straight down to 94 to 53. So, there's going to be a lot of players cut over the next week or so. And we'll be able to talk about that. And one thing I do want to say is, these guys, a lot of these guys, they may end up on a practice squad somewhere, but a lot of them, they've worked their whole lives for this and they get cut and they're not going to get another opportunity in the NFL right away. So they'll have to go back, look for other careers, other jobs and whatnot. So let's, if you're out there and you're watching and somebody on your team gets cut and you're not a big fan of theirs, the way that they played the football or whatnot, that's fine. But let's not be out there bashing these guys. It is their career choice. It's how they earn a living for them and their family. Not all these guys are millionaires 10 times over. Like a lot of these guys we see getting cut right now and will be cut in the next few days. Like they're making the very league minimum. Like they're just not these millionaire players that a lot of the players in the NFL are. Some of them are, but a lot of them aren't. So just got to be a little bit respectful.
So I can't criticize Corey Davis.
I mean, look, he made his money.
I poured some up for Corey Davis. No, I poured some up for Corey Davis.
Joe, you can go after Corey Davis. Corey made his money. That's not who we're talking about, unless he spent his money poorly. But still, he made plenty. I think he made like over $50 million in his career. So Corey's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So
good for you, Corey.
We're talking about there was a running back for the Buccaneers a few years ago, Ernest Graham. Same kind of thing George is talking about. Got cut from his first team, was bagging groceries at Publix when the Bucs called him. That's the kind of guy George is talking about. You end up having to go to a grocery store and bag groceries because you didn't make it. You went to college, but you focused on football. That's the kind of guy. But all right, guys, we're gonna wrap this up. I was gonna ask you guys if you had any surprise cut candidates that you thought guys that might actually get cut, but you know what? We'll just see how it actually plays out, and we'll go from there. So for me, for Joe, for George, I do want to thank you guys for watching the show again. Again, patreon.com/toiletstitles, joinrival.com/title tribe. Do either one of those and it'll make us super happy. If you enjoyed the show, like and subscribe. And then go to our Gilded Chat. We've got a Gilded Chat. Hit us up. We'll get you into our Gilded Chat. Over 200 people talking. about football all the
It's
time,
gonna
about your drafts.
explode. It's getting ready to explode during the draft season. Oh my god.
Oh, dude, I am so excited to talk about football with all of you guys.
Yep.
So join us there as well. So again, thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next week.
Take care, all.